Welcome back, everyone. Comment where you're watching from today. On a quiet evening in downtown Los Angeles, when the sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, a story of kindness was about to unfold, one that would remind us all about the power of compassion and recognition. Michael Mason sat on his worn guitar case near the entrance of the metro station, his fingers calloused from years of playing, his dreams as weathered as the instrument he held. The station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across his face, highlighting the tired lines around his eyes that spoke of countless disappointments and setbacks. At 42, Michael wasn't the young aspiring musician he'd once been. His black button-down shirt, though clean, showed signs of wear, and his guitar, once gleaming and new, now bore the scars of 1,000 performances on these unforgiving streets. But there was something in the way he played that caught the attention of those who took the time to listen, a raw emotion that spoke of both struggle and unwavering hope. Tonight, like every night for the past 3 years, he set up his spot near the station's west entrance. The evening crowd was starting to thin out, tired office workers rushing past with barely a glance in his direction. Michael had learned not to take it personally. Everyone had their own struggles, their own stories. As he tuned his guitar, his mind wandered to the stack of unpaid bills waiting in his small apartment. His daughter, Jennifer, was starting college next semester, and though she'd received a partial scholarship, the remaining costs loomed over him like a shadow. He'd promised her mother, before she passed away 5 years ago, that he would make sure Jennifer got her education, no matter what it took. The first notes of his original song, "Remember the Dream," floated through the station's entrance. It was a melody he'd written during his early days in LA, when hope burned bright and success seemed just around the corner. Now, the lyrics carried a different weight. Speaking of persistence in the face of reality, of holding on to dreams even when they seemed impossible. A few coins clinked into his open guitar case. Thomas Gutierrez, a regular passerby who worked at the nearby coffee shop, always made sure to contribute something. "Keep the faith, brother," Thomas said with a warm smile, the same encouragement he'd been offering for months. Michael nodded gratefully, launching into a cover of "What's Going On" by Marvin Gaye. His voice, rich with experience and touched by hardship, gave the classic song new meaning. A small crowd began to gather, mostly the usual evening commuters who had grown accustomed to his presence. Among them stood Nicole Henderson, an elderly woman who often stopped to listen. She'd told Michael once that his music reminded her of her late husband, who had played in jazz clubs during the 1960s. Tonight, she swayed gently to the rhythm, her presence a quiet affirmation that his music still had the power to move people. As the song ended, the small crowd dispersed, leaving behind a modest collection of bills and coins in his case. Michael checked his watch, 7:30 p.m. He'd give it another hour before heading home to the apartment he shared with his brother, William, who had taken them in when times got tough. Just then, a tall figure paused at the station entrance. Most people rushed past, heads down, focused on their destinations. But this man stood still, listening as Michael began playing the tracks of "My Tears." There was something familiar about him, but in the harsh station lighting, Michael couldn't quite place it. The man moved closer, and a passing train's headlights illuminated his face. Michael's fingers almost stumbled on the strings as recognition hit him. Magic Johnson, the Lakers legend himself, was standing there, genuinely listening to his music. Michael's first instinct was to switch to something more upbeat, more impressive, but something held him back. Instead, he continued with the soulful rendition he'd been playing, pouring his heart into every note. The song was about masks and hidden pain, about keeping up appearances while struggling inside, themes that had become all too familiar in his own life. Magic Johnson didn't move, Didn't reach for his phone, didn't do anything except listen. His presence drew more attention, and soon a larger crowd had gathered. Some recognized the basketball legend, while others were simply caught up in the moment, in the magic of live music echoing through the station. When the song ended, Magic stepped forward. "That was something special," he said, his voice carrying the same warmth that had made him a beloved figure both on and off the court. "How long have you been playing here?" Michael told him about his 3 years at the station, about how he'd started playing here after losing his job at the music store where he'd taught guitar lessons for 15 years. He didn't mean to share so much, but there was something about Magic's genuine interest that made it easy to open up. "You're good," Magic said, "really good. But I'm guessing this isn't where you pictured yourself playing when you first picked up that guitar." Michael laughed softly, a sound tinged with both humor and resignation. "No, can't say it was. But life has its own plans sometimes, you know?" Magic nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I do know. But sometimes life needs a little push in the right direction." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, holding it out to Michael. "I'm having a charity event next week at my foundation. We could use some real music, not the usual pre-recorded stuff. Would you be interested?" Michael stared at the card, his heart racing. Yes, of course. Thank you, Mr. Johnson." "Magic," he corrected with a smile. "And thank you. Your music. It reminds me of why I started my foundation in the first place. Sometimes people just need someone to stop and listen, to recognize what they have to offer." As Magic turned to leave, he dropped something into Michael's guitar case. "Keep playing your truth, brother. The world needs more of that." After Magic disappeared into the crowd, Michael looked down and froze. Among the scattered coins and small bills lay a check for $5,000, made out to him, with a note attached, "For Jennifer's education. Music and education both open doors, let's make sure she gets through hers. Magic." Michael's hands trembled as he read the note again. Somehow, during their brief conversation, he must have mentioned Jennifer's college plans, though he couldn't remember doing so. The generosity overwhelmed him, but it wasn't just about the money. It was about being seen, being heard, having his struggles and his dedication recognized. That night, as he packed up his guitar, Michael noticed something else had changed. Several people who had witnessed the encounter had added his number to their phones, asking about private guitar lessons. A local restaurant owner inquired about regular weekend performances. It was as if Magic's recognition had given others permission to see him too, to recognize the value in what he had to offer. On his way home, Michael thought about all the times he'd considered giving up, all the nights he'd questioned whether he was fooling himself by holding on to his music. But something had kept him going, the same spirit that had driven him to promise his late wife that their daughter would get her education, the same determination that brought him to this station night after night. Have you ever been close to giving up on your dreams, only to have someone believe in you just when you needed it most? Share your story in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the greatest acts of kindness come from simply taking the time to stop, listen, and recognize the value in another person's journey. The week following Magic Johnson's unexpected visit transformed Michael Mason's life in ways he never could have imagined. The metro station, once just another spot where he played for spare change, had become something of a local attraction. People who had rushed past him for years now stopped to listen, their curiosity piqued by the story of the basketball legend's impromptu visit. William Mason, Michael's brother, could hardly believe the change in their small apartment's atmosphere. The weight of constant worry that had hung over Michael seemed to have lifted, replaced by a cautious optimism that brought back memories of their younger days. Each evening, Michael would return home with new stories of connections made and opportunities emerging. Thomas Gutierrez, the coffee shop worker who had always supported Michael's music, spread the word among his customers. Soon, Michael found himself with a growing list of potential students for private guitar lessons. The extra income wasn't life-changing, but it meant he could start contributing more to the household expenses, easing the burden on his brother. Jennifer, Michael's daughter, called every night from her dorm at community college, excited about the possibility of transferring to a 4-year university. The sound of hope in her voice made Michael's heart swell. "Dad," she said during one call, "I can't believe Magic Johnson actually stopped to listen to your music." Mom would have loved that story. The mention of his late wife, Angela, brought both a smile and a touch of sadness to Michael's face. She had always believed in his music, even during their toughest times. Now, somehow, her faith was being rewarded, even if she wasn't here to see it. As the day of Magic's charity event approached, Michael spent every spare moment practicing. His fingers moved across the guitar strings with renewed purpose, each note carrying the weight of this unexpected opportunity. Nicole Henderson, the elderly woman who regularly listened to his station performances, noticed the difference in his playing. "There's something different about your music now," she told him one evening, her eyes twinkling. "It's like you're not just playing for us anymore, you're playing for yourself again." The observation struck Michael deeply. She was right. For years, he'd been playing to survive, focusing on songs that would appeal to passers-by and hopefully earn enough to help with the bills. But now, he found himself returning to his original compositions, the ones that told his own story. The night before the charity event, Michael sat in his small bedroom, surrounded by the memories of his musical journey. His first guitar, now retired, hung on the wall, a gift from his parents when he was 16. Next to it was a photo of him and Angela at their first apartment, both young and full of dreams, his guitar case visible in the background. Douglas Richards, an old friend from his music store days, stopped by with a garment bag. "You can't play at Magic Johnson's event in your usual gear," he said with a grin, revealing a well-tailored black suit. "Consider it an investment in your future." The gesture brought tears to Michael's eyes. The support of his community, the people who had watched him struggle for years without losing faith in him, meant almost as much as Magic's recognition. The morning of the event arrived with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The venue was the Johnson Foundation's main hall, a far cry from the metro station's fluorescent lights and hurrying crowds. As Michael set up his equipment for the sound check, he couldn't help but feel out of place among the professional event staff and elegant decorations. Then Magic Johnson walked in, his presence immediately filling the room with warmth and energy. "Michael," he called out, striding over with his characteristic smile. "I've been telling everyone about your music. Are you ready to show them what real soul sounds like?" Before Michael could respond, Magic introduced him to Robert Thomas, a local music producer who had worked with several successful artists. "Robert's always looking for authentic talent," Magic explained. "I told him he needed to hear you play." The sound check turned into an impromptu performance as Michael played one of his original songs, "Remember the Dream." The acoustics of the hall transformed his music, giving it a richness he'd never heard before. The event staff paused in their work, listening as the melody filled the space. "That's what I'm talking about," Magic said when the song ended. "That's the kind of music that reminds people why they keep fighting for their dreams." As guests began arriving for the event, Michael retreated to a small preparation room. Through the door, he could hear the growing buzz of conversation, the sound of Los Angeles' elite gathering for a night of charity and celebration. His hands trembled slightly as he tuned his guitar one final time. A knock at the door revealed Jennifer, who had driven down from her college for the event. She wore a simple blue dress that had belonged to her mother, and the sight of her standing there, so grown up and full of pride, nearly overwhelmed Michael. "Mom would be so proud of you, Dad," she said, hugging him tightly. "Not just for tonight, but for never giving up, even when things were really hard." The event began with Magic Johnson's welcome speech, his words focusing on the importance of community support and believing in second chances. Then, to Michael's surprise, Magic began telling the story of their meeting at the metro station. Sometimes we forget that talent and determination can be found in the most unexpected places, Magic told the crowd. "We rush past it every day, too busy with our own lives to stop and listen. But tonight, I want you all to listen. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Michael Mason." As Michael stepped onto the stage, guitar in hand, he saw faces he'd only seen on television or in magazines. But he also saw Thomas from the coffee shop, Nicole Henderson, and other regular supporters from the metro station. Magic had made sure they were all invited. For the next hour, Michael played a mix of covers and original songs, each one telling part of his story. He played "Remember the Dream" with a new arrangement, the lyrics about persistence and hope resonating differently in this setting. He performed Angela's Lullaby, a song he'd written for his wife during her illness, his voice carrying all the love and loss of their years together. The audience, initially politely attentive, became increasingly engaged as his set continued. These were people used to the finest entertainment money could buy, but there was something about Michael's authentic, emotionally raw performance that cut through the usual social barriers. During his final song, Michael noticed Magic Johnson watching from the side of the stage, nodding in appreciation. The basketball legend understood something about dreams and determination, about the importance of not just achieving success but using it to lift others up. After the performance, the evening became a blur of introductions and conversations. Robert Thomas, the music producer, discussed the possibility of recording some of Michael's original songs. A local restaurant owner offered him a regular weekend spot with actual pay, not just tips. Business cards filled his pockets, each one representing a potential opportunity. But the most meaningful moment came when Magic pulled him aside near the end of the event. "You know, Michael," he said, "what happened at the metro station wasn't just chance. I'd heard you play before, several times actually. Your music helped me through some tough moments when I needed to clear my head." The revelation stunned Michael. "You mean you'd been listening all along?" Magic smiled. "Sometimes the right moment takes time to arrive. You never stopped giving your best, even when it seemed like no one was paying attention. That's what success is really about, not just talent, but the determination to keep going, to keep believing in yourself even when it's hard." As the event wound down, Michael found himself sitting at a table with Jennifer, William, and some of his metro station regulars. They all shared stories about their favorite performances, about the times they'd seen him play when the station was almost empty, about the ways his music had touched their lives without him even knowing. Nicole Henderson summed it up best: "Your music was never just about making money or getting recognition. It was about sharing your heart, about reminding us all that beauty can be found in the most ordinary places. Magic Johnson might have given you this opportunity, but you earned it long before he stopped to listen." On the drive home, Michael's guitar safely stowed in the back seat, Jennifer asked him what he was thinking about. "I'm thinking about how one person taking the time to really see you can change everything," he replied. "Not just because of what they can do for you, but because they remind you to believe in yourself again." The next morning, Michael returned to his spot at the metro station. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. The morning commuters were surprised to see him thereafter. His big night, but Michael just smiled and played on. He understood now that success wasn't just about moving up and moving on, it was about remembering where you came from and paying forward the kindness you'd received. As he played, he noticed a young woman watching from the corner, a worn guitar case by her feet. He recognized the look in her eyes, the same mix of hope and uncertainty he'd carried for so long. When he finished his song, he waved her over. "Do you play?" he asked. She nodded shyly. "I'm just starting out. Been trying to get the courage to play here for weeks." Michael smiled, remembering his own first days at the station. "Well, how about we play something together? Sometimes all you need is someone to believe in you enough to give you a chance." Have you ever had the opportunity to pay forward an act of kindness that changed your life? Share your story in the comments below. And remember, success isn't just about achieving your dreams, it's about helping others believe in theirs. The ripple effects of Magic Johnson's act of kindness continued to spread through the community in unexpected ways. The young woman Michael had encouraged that morning at the metro station was Crystal Martinez, a talented guitarist who had been working as a waitress at the nearby diner. Within weeks, she became a regular performer at the station, her voice blending with Michael's during impromptu duets that drew growing crowds. The station itself had transformed from a mere transit point to something of a community gathering space. Thomas Gutierrez's coffee shop started offering music via Metro mornings, where commuters could grab their coffee and enjoy live performances by local musicians. Michael coordinated the schedule, ensuring that talented artists like Crystal always had a spot to play. Robert Thomas, the music producer from Magic's charity event, had kept his word. He invited Michael to record some of his original songs at his studio, a small but professional setup where many local artists had gotten their start. The experience of hearing his music properly recorded for the first time brought tears to Michael's eyes. "You know," Robert said during one session, "Magic Johnson told me something interesting about why he stopped that night. He said he'd been watching you play for months, but what caught his attention wasn't just the music, it was how you treated every person who stopped to listen, whether they could spare a dollar or not." This revelation made Michael think about all the seemingly small interactions that had led to this moment. Nicole Henderson's faithful presence, Thomas's daily encouragement, the countless commuters who had shared brief but meaningful connections through his music. Each one had helped him keep going when giving up seemed like the easier choice. Jennifer called one evening with exciting news. She had been accepted to transfer to UCLA for the upcoming semester. Magic's generous check had made it possible for her to apply without worrying about the application fees, and her excellent grades had done the rest. "Dad," she said, her voice full of emotion, "remember when Mom used to say that music would open doors for us? She was right, just not in the way we expected." The mention of Angela inspired Michael to organize a benefit concert at the metro station. With Magic Johnson's foundation helping to promote the event, they raised money for music education programs in local schools. Crystal Martinez performed alongside Michael, her confidence growing with each song. The event drew coverage from local news stations, spreading the story of the metro station's musical transformation. Magic Johnson himself made an appearance at the benefit, this time bringing along some of his former Lakers teammates. They shared stories about the power of community and the importance of giving back. "What's happening here," Magic told the gathered crowd, "is exactly what I believe in, one act of kindness growing into something bigger than any of us could have imagined." The benefit's success led to a regular series of community concerts at the station. Local businesses, inspired by the positive changes, began sponsoring events and supporting emerging artists. Michael found himself not just performing, but mentoring young musicians, sharing the lessons he'd learned about perseverance and authenticity. William, Michael's brother, watched these developments with pride. "You know what's different now?" he said one evening. "You're not just playing music anymore, you're building something. You're creating opportunities for others the way magic created one for you." The truth of his brother's words struck Michael deeply. He remembered all the years he'd spent focusing on his own dreams, measuring success by record deals that never came and stages he never reached. Now, success looked different. It was in the smile of a young musician playing their first public performance, in the community that gathered to support local artists, in the way music had transformed a simple metro station into a place of hope and connection. Crystal Martinez's progress became a particular source of pride. She had taken to performing Michael's song "Remember the Dream," adding her own Spanish verses that spoke to her family's immigrant experience. The combination created something entirely new and powerful, drawing attention from local radio stations. One evening, as Michael packed up his guitar after a performance, he found Magic Johnson waiting by the station entrance. "I heard about what you're doing here," Magic said, his smile warm and approving. "This is exactly why I stopped that night. I saw someone who had the potential to do more than just make music. You're building bridges, creating opportunities, just like my foundation tries to do." Michael shared with Magic how the initial act of kindness had grown into something larger than himself. "It wasn't just about the money," he explained. "It was about being seen, being valued. That's why I'm trying to give back now, that same recognition and support to others who need it." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a group of young musicians, each carrying instruments and hope in their eyes. They were there for the weekly mentoring session Michael had started, where experienced performers shared their knowledge with aspiring artists. Magic stayed to watch the session, his presence adding an extra layer of excitement to the evening. He listened as Michael guided the young musicians, not just in technique, but in finding their authentic voice and staying true to their artistic vision. "You know what I love about this?" Magic said afterward. "You're not just teaching them about music, you're teaching them about life, about resilience, about the importance of community. That's the real magic happening here." The next day, Michael received an unexpected call from Magic's foundation. They wanted to establish a permanent music program at the metro station, with Michael as its director. The program would provide instruments, lessons, and performance opportunities for underprivileged youth, combining music education with mentorship. As Michael shared the news with his metro station family, Thomas, Nicole, Crystal, and all the regular performers and supporters, he realized that his journey had come full circle. What had started as a personal struggle had become a mission to ensure that other musicians would never have to feel as alone and unsupported as he once had. Jennifer, home from college for the weekend, sat with her father at his regular spot in the station, watching the steady stream of commuters and musicians that now filled the space with life and energy. "Mom would love this," she said softly. "She always said your music would change lives. She just knew it would happen somehow." Michael picked up his guitar, feeling the familiar weight of it in his hands. The same instrument that had once been his only source of income now represented something far more valuable: the power to create change, to build community, to transform struggles into opportunities for others. As he began to play "Remember the Dream," his voice was joined by Crystal's, then by other regular performers, each adding their own unique touch to the song. The impromptu performance drew a crowd, as they always did now, but Michael wasn't playing for the audience anymore. He was playing for every dreamer who needed to be reminded that they weren't alone, that their struggles were seen, that their persistence mattered. Have you ever been part of a community that turned everyday moments into something extraordinary? Share your story in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the greatest gift we can give is to help others believe in their own potential, just as someone once believed in us. 1 year after Magic Johnson's life-changing visit to the metro station, Michael Mason stood on a very different stage. The Johnson Foundation's annual gala was celebrating the success of the Metro Music Initiative, the program that had grown from that single act of kindness into a citywide movement of musical mentorship and community building. The ballroom was filled with familiar faces: Crystal Martinez, now teaching guitar at 3 different community centers; Thomas Gutierrez, whose coffee shop had expanded to include a small performance space; and Nicole Henderson, who had become something of a grandmother figure to all the young musicians who performed at the station. Jennifer sat in the front row, her UCLA sweater worn proudly, beaming as her father prepared to address the gathered crowd. Next to her was William, who had watched his brother's transformation from struggling street musician to community leader with unwavering support. Magic Johnson stepped up to the podium first, his presence as commanding as ever. Sometimes, he began, the biggest changes start with the smallest moments of recognition. A year ago, I stopped to listen to a musician who had been playing at our metro station for years. What I heard wasn't just music, it was dedication, resilience, and heart. As Magic introduced him, Michael took a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought him here. His worn guitar case, the same one he'd sat on during countless metro station performances, now stood as a symbol of perseverance rather than struggle. When Magic Johnson stopped to listen that night, Michael began, his voice steady and sure. He did more than just change my life. He reminded me of something I'd forgotten during my years of struggling, that every person deserves to be seen, to be heard, to be valued. Michael shared stories of the Metro Music Initiative's impact. Christopher Parker, a troubled teen who found purpose through guitar lessons; Maria Ramirez, a retired teacher who organized senior citizen music appreciation groups; and Robert Wilson, a businessman who now spent his lunch breaks playing saxophone at the station. But the real story, Michael continued, isn't about me or even about music. It's about what happens when we take the time to recognize the potential in others, when we transform our own blessings into opportunities for those around us. The screens behind him showed images of the metro station's transformation, the new performance space, the teaching areas, the community gatherings that had become a regular part of city life. Each photo captured moments of connection, of joy, of lives being changed through music and mentorship. Crystal Martinez took the stage next, performing a duet with Michael of Remember the Dream, the song that had first caught Magic's attention. Their voices blended in perfect harmony, English and Spanish verses weaving together to tell a story of hope and perseverance that transcended language. As they performed, Michael caught sight of Magic Johnson in the audience, nodding in appreciation. The basketball legend had done more than just write a check that night. He had recognized something in Michael that Michael had almost stopped seeing in himself. After the performance, the foundation announced the expansion of the Metro Music Initiative to 3 more stations across Los Angeles. Michael would oversee the program's growth, working with local musicians and community leaders to recreate the magic that had transformed that first station. Later that evening, as the formal celebrations wound down, a smaller group gathered in the original Metro station for an impromptu concert. The fluorescent lights still buzzed overhead, but they no longer seemed harsh. Instead, they illuminated a space that had become sacred through the power of music and community. Jennifer picked up her father's guitar, playing the opening notes of Angela's Lullaby. Michael joined in, their duet filling the station with memories of the woman who had always believed in the power of music to change lives. Magic Johnson arrived quietly, taking a seat next to Nicole Henderson. They watched as various musicians, some professional, some just beginning their journey, took turns sharing their gifts. Each performance was met with the same attention and respect, regardless of skill level. "You know what's beautiful about this?" Magic said to Michael during a break. "A year ago, you were playing here alone. Now look, you've created a family." Michael looked around at the gathered faces, Thomas distributing coffee from a thermal carafe, Crystal helping a young guitarist with her finger positioning, William deep in conversation with Robert Thomas about recording equipment for the new stations. "I learned something this year," Michael replied. "Success isn't about reaching the top, it's about bringing others with you on the climb." Have you ever been part of a chain of kindness that grew beyond what you could have imagined? Share your story in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the greatest gift we can give is simply taking the time to truly see someone, because in that recognition, we help them see themselves.